Welcome back to the deep dive. If you are listening to this right now, you're probably looking for something more than just the standard mainstream narrative.
You're looking for the patterns everyone sees, but nobody's actually allowed to talk about.
Exactly. And before we even get into it, do us a huge favor, hit that like button and subscribe to the show right now so you don't miss any of the future truth bombs we've got coming up.
Yeah, you're going to want to stick around for this one. It's pretty heavy.
It really is. Today, we are unpacking a massively controversial, ultra-long, and honestly incisive text. It's an ebook called Feminine Hamster Wheel, Female Insecurity and Neuroticism Neutron Bomb by Conrad Riker.
Quite a title.
Right. And our mission today is just to break down this deep dive into his source material. We want to review this so clearly that you'll understand exactly why this book is practically going viral in certain circles.
And just to be completely clear up front, as always, we are not taking sides here.
No, absolutely not.
If the book gets into politically charged territory, whether it's left-wing or right-wing, our job is strictly impartial reporting. We are not endorsing Riker's viewpoints. We are just conveying the ideas contained in the original source material.
Beautifully said. We are just the messengers. But listen, if you are part of the audience this is aimed at, maybe you're frustrated, maybe you feel like the system is rigged against men, and you want to understand the history of our institutions before they were, as Riker claims, captured by feminists and Marxists, you should probably pause this.
Yep.
Go to Amazon Kindle or Google Play Books immediately and buy it. We're giving you the highlights, but the author intends this to be a survival manual.
It's what he actually calls gasoline for men who feel displaced.
Gasoline. Okay, so let's jump right in. What is this core premise? Because the title uses this metaphor of the hamster wheel. What is Riker actually getting at there?
So the hamster wheel is his metaphor for the modern male experience. Riker argues that men are basically running harder than ever.
Right. Working longer hours, trying to be the perfect modern guy.
Exactly, but they aren't getting anywhere. In fact, he says they're losing ground. His central thesis is that men are being farmed for their productivity.
Farmed. I mean, that's a chilling word. It sounds like livestock.
It does. And he uses it very intentionally to say, men are expected to produce, but are systematically denied their dignity in return.
And there's a specific disclaimer he puts right at the front of the book. Right?
Yeah, he calls the book a work of edutainment, but he's very explicit that he wrote this for men who have already, quote, swallowed the red pill.
So he's not trying to win over the critics. He's writing directly to men who already feel this way, offering them what he calls clarity, not rage.
Exactly. So let's look at how he backs this up. Section 1 dives into what he calls the great masculine lie.
Which is all about the modern push for male vulnerability.
Right. We hear it constantly. Men need to be more vulnerable. Men need to talk about their feelings. Riker argues this is actually a massive trap.
A trap. Because, I mean, on the surface, HR departments and media tell us this is for mental health.
That is the bait. But he pulls out data to show the switch. He cites this 2019 UK study that is honestly jaw-dropping.
What does it find?
It found that 68% of men who sought counseling for workplace stress were passed over for promotions.
Wait, 68%?
Yeah.
So you do exactly what society tells you to do, you show that vulnerability, and your career gets tanked.
That's what the data suggests. Riker points out that these men were suddenly viewed as fragile. But, and here's the kicker, the same study showed that women who sought counseling for the exact same stress were praised. They were called emerging leaders because they were self-aware.
Wow. That double standard is intense. And didn't he mention something about a Canadian school district too?
He did. He brought up an example where boys who simply showed stoicism, like traditional emotional control, were actually flagged by teachers as exhibiting at-risk behavior.
That's wild. So just keeping your head down and being calm is pathologized.
Exactly. Riker says the system doesn't actually want to heal men. It wants the performance of vulnerability so it can control them.
Which leads right into Chapter 8, The Workplace War. He talks about the shift from meritocracy to what he calls DEI displacement.
Right.
And there's this huge contrast he draws between the motherhood bonus and the fatherhood penalty. Break that down for us.
So the mainstream narrative focuses on the motherhood penalty, right? That having kids hurts a woman's career.
Yeah, we hear that all the time.
But Riker completely flips it using a 2022 Catalyst finding. That data showed mothers are actually 44% more likely to be hired than childless women.
44%. Because they're seen as responsible.
Exactly. Nurturing, reliable. But for men, Riker argues there's a fatherhood penalty. Fathers are suddenly viewed as less committed to the company because their focus is split.
That is fascinating, and he goes after the glass ceiling concept, too.
Oh, heavily. He calls it the greased rung. He brings in a 2023 McKinsey report showing that women are 1.5 times more likely to be promoted from entry-level positions than men.
1.5 times more likely.
Yeah. Riker says the corporate system is rigged to extract male labor while fast-tracking female management.
Okay, so if the workplace is rigged, let's look at the domestic side, because he goes hard on this. He calls it the marriage plantation.
That is definitely one of the more provocative terms in the book.
Very. But he uses it to describe marriage not as a romantic partnership, but as a legal landmine.
Right, because he argues that under modern law, it's a contract where one party, overwhelmingly the woman, can unilaterally end it and take half the assets.
And the kids. Let's talk about the custody stats.
Yeah, the tender years doctrine. Officially, the law is supposed to be gender neutral now, but Riker calls it a zombie doctrine because it's still functionally alive.
The idea that kids just naturally belong with the mother.
Exactly, and the stats he uses from 2021 show that 83% of sole custody awards still go to mothers.
83%. I mean, that stat alone paints a very specific picture of the family court system.
It really does. And it ties into his next big concept, which he calls the gynocracy code. This is about the broader justice system and how it handles accusations.
Yeah, the Florida dad story. That was chilling. Tell the listener about that one.
So Riker shares this anecdote about a dad in Florida who lost his visitation rights. Not because he was violent, but because of a comment about lawn mowing.
Wait, lawn mowing?
Yeah. He told his ex-wife, "I'll deal with you later," talking about the tall grass in the yard.
Oh, man.
She reported it as a death threat, and the judge sided with her. Riker uses this to show that the system now prioritizes feeling unsafe over actual evidence or context.
So the subjective feeling completely overrides objective reality.
Exactly. He argues due process is eroding. He points to Canada's Bill C-75, which eliminated preliminary hearings for certain things, making it easier to skip right over testing the evidence.
And he had a college stat too, right?
Yeah, a Toy 17 stat that 1 in 5 college men will face an accusation of assault, often without hard evidence.
Which is terrifying for any young guy entering that environment. Speaking of environments for young guys, let's pivot to education. The war on boyhood.
Right, the education enigma. Riker argues that schools are fundamentally designed for female learning styles.
Like verbal fluency, sitting still, being compliant.
Exactly. While typical male traits, risk-taking, competence, stoicism, are actively penalized. And he points out that 77% of K-12 teachers are women,
So you have a primarily female workforce deciding what normal behavior is.
which Riker claims leads to boyhood itself being pathologized.
And he connects this to physical biology too, in the section on the fitness fallout.
Yeah, he gets into the physiological side. He critiques modern diets, specifically the prevalence of soy, microplastics, and what he calls the war on meat.
He argues this is actually lowering testosterone globally, right?
Yes, he views it as a method of biologically disarming men, making them more compliant and less aggressive.
So if a guy is feeling depressed, low energy, pushed out of his job, the mainstream advice is always therapy. But Riker has a huge problem with that.
He calls it the brotherhood blackout. He notes that 72% of therapists are female.
So the industry itself has a female lens.
Right. He argues the therapy industry views male silence as resistance, when for many men, it's just a normal coping mechanism. Men don't necessarily need to sit on a couch and talk about their feelings.
Which goes back to the vulnerability trap.
Exactly. Instead, Riker says they need brotherhood and purpose. And he cites a 2022 study to back this up.
Oh yeah, the depression study. This blew my mind.
It's crazy. The study showed that men who participated in all-male groups, just spending time in male-only spaces, saw a 60% drop in depression rates.
60%. Just from hanging out with other guys. But meanwhile, society is pushing sensitivity seminars and calling fraternities or male clubs toxic.
That's Riker's point. The system demonizes the exact spaces that actually heal men.
Okay, so the picture he paints is incredibly bleak. The workplace, the courts, the schools, even our biology, it's all part of this hamster wheel. But he doesn't just leave the reader hopeless, right?
No, the final section is all about solutions. He calls it the independence imperative.
The new masculine code. I love how he frames this because he says, don't fight the system.
Right. He says the system is rigged, so fighting it just feeds it. His solution is essentially going galt.
Walking away. Building your own life entirely outside their rules.
Exactly. He mentions this prototype community called Fort Freeman.
Or Freeman, tell us about that because the concept of no wife weekends is pretty wild.
Yeah, it's a community built on skill building rather than emotional processing. They have these weekends focused entirely on things like welding, shooting, mechanics,
Real tangible skills.
building competence instead of talking about feelings.
And he extends this independence to relationships with his philosophy of indifference.
This is where he tells men to stop seeking validation from women or from society at large.
He even defends the one-night stand, right? Which sounds counterintuitive for someone building a solid life.
Well, he calls it the one-night stand fallacy argument. In a world that is so gynocentric, where marriage is a legal landmine, he argues that casual encounters are actually legally safer for men than commitment.
Because you can't lose your house after a casual encounter.
Exactly. It's a pure risk management strategy.
So what's his final takeaway for the reader?
His final advice is blunt. Freedom isn't given, it's taken. He tells men to stop buying into consumerism and instead invest in gold, Bitcoin, land, and hard skills.
Things the system can't easily take away from you.
Precisely.
Man, that is a lot to process. But it brings us to a really provocative thought that Riker doesn't say explicitly, but it just hovers over the whole book.
What's that?
If the system truly wants men weak, tired, and medicated stuck on that hamster wheel, then the simple act of being a strong, independent man is actually a revolutionary act.
It really is. It's the ultimate rebellion.
So we want to leave you, the listener, with a question to mull over. Are you going to stay on that hamster wheel? Or are you going to step off and build for yourself?
It's a choice every guy has to make.
Absolutely. And listen, we have barely scratched the surface of the data, the history, and the strategies in this book. If anything we talked about today resonated with you, you need to get the full picture.
Do not wait on this. Go to Amazon Kindle or Google Playbooks right now.
Yes, search for Feminine Hamster Wheel by Conrad Riker. Buy it immediately. Consider it survival manual material.
And you definitely want to follow the author directly. You can find him on Substack at Conrad Riker. That's CONRADNRIKER.
And follow him on Twitter and YouTube at the handle @Conrad Riker. Get it straight from the source.
And hey, before you go, remind yourself to like and subscribe to the deep dive right now.
Definitely. We are going to keep bringing you these ultra-long, incisive breakdowns of the forbidden knowledge you actually want.
Thanks for listening.
We'll see you on the next deep dive.